BBNJ negotiations. Since 2017, an intergovernmental conference convened by the United Nations General Assembly has been negotiating a new legally binding instrument under the United Nations Conventions on the Law of the Sea (UN) clause on the conservation and sustainable use of marine biological diversity of areas beyond national jurisdiction. BBNJ biological diversity of areas beyond national jurisdiction. The United Nations General Assembly decided in 2015 to develop an international legally binding instrument under UNCLOS on the conservation and sustainable use of marine biological diversity in areas beyond national jurisdiction. The BBNJ Treaty, also known as the Treaty of the High Seas, is an international legally binding agreement on the conservation and sustainable use of marine biological diversity of areas beyond national jurisdiction, currently under negotiation at the United Nations. The instrument is developed within the framework of the UN clause. It was agreed following conclusion of the fifth round of treaty negotiations at the United Nations headquarters in New York, United States. The legal framework would place 30% of the world's ocean into protected areas, but more money into marine conservation, and covers access to and use of marine genetic resources. The BBNJ Treaty addresses, among other things, the conservation and sustainable use of marine BBNJ means biological diversity of areas beyond national jurisdiction. The BBNJ Treaty addresses among other things, the conservation and sustainable use of marine BBNJ, marine genetic resources, including questions on benefit sharing, area-based management tools ABMT, including marine protected areas, environmental impact assessment, and capacity building and the transfer of marine technology. Nairobi Declaration 2021. Nairobi Declaration, adopted by African ministers and heads of delegation 2021, underlined the need to deliver commitments on the program of action (POA) for implementing the Sendai framework in Africa. This included the action plans under the POA. This included the action plans under the POA to implement Sendai framework for disaster risk reduction SFDRR 2015 to 2030. The declaration was adopted at the 7th high-level meeting on disaster risk reduction. Theme: towards disaster risk informed development for a resilient Africa in COVID-19 transformed world. It was organized by UN Office for Disaster Risk Reduction in collaboration with the African Union Commission under the Intergovernmental Authority on Development. Sendai framework is aimed towards substantial reduction in disaster risk and losses in lives, livelihoods and health, and in the economic, physical, social, cultural and environmental assets of persons, businesses, communities and countries. Implementation of the Sendai framework is expected to contribute to UN mandated sustainable development goals and to achieving Agenda 2063 commitment to the Africa we want. Methane and climate change. It is a hydrocarbon that is a primary component of natural gas. Methane is also a greenhouse gas, so its presence in the atmosphere affects the Earth's temperature and climate system. Methane is emitted from a variety of anthropogenic and natural sources. Anthropogenic emission sources includes landfills, oil and natural gas systems, agricultural activities, coal mining, stationary and mobile combustion, wastewater treatment, and certain industrial processes. Methane is the second most abundant anthropogenic GHG after carbon dioxide, accounting for about 20% of global emissions. Methane is more than 25 times as potent as carbon dioxide at trapping heat in the atmosphere. Because methane is both a powerful greenhouse gas and short-lived compared to carbon dioxide, Achieving significant reductions would have a rapid and significant effect on atmospheric warming potential. Oil and Gas Methane Partnership 2.0. OGMP 2.0 launched in November 2020 is a multi-stakeholder initiative launched by UNEP and Climate and Clean Air Coalition. It is the only comprehensive measurement-based reporting framework for the oil and gas sector, and its 74 member companies represent many of the world's largest operators across the entire value chain and account for over 50% of all oil and gas production. Energy Conservation Amendment Act 2022. The Energy Conservation Act 2001. The act was enacted to provide for efficient use of energy, its conservation and matters connected therewith and are incidental thereto. The Amendment Act provides for regulation of energy consumption by equipment, appliances, vehicles, vessels, industrial units, buildings or establishments that consume, generate, transmit or supply energy. Carbon credit trading. Central government has been empowered to specify a carbon credit trading scheme. Central government or any authorized agency may issue carbon credit certificates to entities registered and compliant with the scheme. The carbon credits under the scheme will be tradable. Any other person may also purchase a carbon credit certificate voluntarily. While carbon credit has not been defined under the Principal Act or the Amendment Act, it generally refers to a tradable permit allowing the holder to emit a specified amount of carbon dioxide or other greenhouse gases. Energy Conservation and Sustainable Building Codes (ECSBC), a code which provides norms and standards for energy efficiency and its conservation, use of renewable energy and other green building requirements for a building. This code shall apply to all buildings to be constructed after notification of ECSBC by central and state governments. Only buildings having a minimum connected load of 100 kilowatts or contract demand of 120 kVA and are intended to be used for commercial or office building or residential purposes. The Amendment Act empowers the central government to specify a minimum share of consumption of non-fossil sources by designated consumers as energy or feedstock. Different shares of consumption may be specified for different types of non-fossil sources for different designated consumers. The Amendment Act also brings into place an element of penalty upon the failure to meet the minimum share of consumption of non-fossil sources by designated consumers. Under the Amendment Act, a designated consumer who fails foul of the minimum share of consumption of non-fossil sources would be liable to pay penalty up to 10 lakh rupees for each failure. Increasing scope of energy conservation standards. Earlier, such codes were only applicable to electrical appliances. Now, the scope of energy conservation codes has been widened to include appliances, vehicles, vessels, industrial unit, building or establishments. Composition of the Governing Council of BEE. The Act provides for setting up of the Bureau of Energy Efficiency (BEE). Before the amendment, the General Superintendent's direction and management of the affairs of the Bureau vested with the Governing Council, which had 20 to 26 members. The Amendment Act amends this to provide that the Governing Council shall comprise of 31 to 37 members. National Green Tribunal. It is a tribunal set up to address environmental issues, a statutory body established by National Green Tribunal Act 2010. Composition: 1 full-time chairman, not less than 10, but subject to a maximum of 20 full-time judicial members as the central government may from time to time notify. Not less than 10, but subject to maximum 20 full-time judicial members as the central government may from time to time notify. Aims effective and expeditious disposal of cases relating to environmental protection and conservation of forests and other natural resources, enforcement of any legal rights related to the environment, giving relief and compensation for damages to persons and property and for matters connected therewith or incidental thereto. The tribunal has 3 courts in its principal bench in Delhi and 4 zonal benches in the east, west, central and south to encompass all states and union territories. NGT deals in the following Act: Water Prevention and Control of Pollution Act 1974, Water Prevention and Control of Pollution Cess Act 1977, Forest Conservation Act 1980, Air Prevention and Control of Pollution Act 1981, Environment Protection Act 1986, Public Liability Insurance Act 1991, does not deal with Wildlife Protection Act 1972. Okay. Greenhouse gases: carbon dioxide, methane, nitrous oxides, perfluorocarbons, hydrofluorocarbons, sulfur, hexafluoride. Carbon dioxide: burning of fossil fuels, deforestation. Methane, CH4, growing paddy, excreta of cattle and other livestock, termites, burning of fossil fuel wood, landfills, wetlands, fertilizer factories. Nitrous oxides: burning of fossil fuels, fertilizers, burning of wood and crop residue. Perfluorocarbons, produced as a byproduct in aluminium production and manufacturing of semiconductors. Hydrofluorocarbons, used as refrigerants, aerosol propellants, solvents and fire retardants. Sulfur hexafluoride, used as a tracer gas for leak detection, used in electrical transmission equipment. Paris Agreement. The Paris Agreement is legally binding international treaty on climate change. It was adopted by 196 parties at COP21 in Paris in 2015. Its goal is to limit global warming to well below 2, preferably to 1.5 Celsius compared to pre-industrial levels. To achieve this long-term temperature goal, countries aim to reach global peaking of greenhouse gas emissions as soon as possible to achieve a climate neutral world by mid-century. The agreement aims to increase the ability of countries to deal with the impacts of climate change and at making finance flows consistent with low GHG emissions and climate resilient pathways. To reach these ambitious goals, appropriate mobilization and provision of financial resources, a new technology framework and enhanced capacity building is to be put in place, thus supporting action by developing countries and the most vulnerable countries in line with their national objectives. The agreement also provides for an enhanced transparency framework for action and support. The Paris Agreement requires all parties to put forward their best efforts through nationally determined contributions (NDCs) and to strengthen these efforts in the years ahead. This includes requirements that all parties report regularly on their emissions and their implementation efforts. There will also be a global stock take every 5 years to assess the collective progress towards achieving the purpose of the agreement and to inform further individual actions by parties. Important provisions of Paris Agreement. Long-term temperature goal, Article 2, limiting global temperature increase to well below 2 degrees Celsius while pursuing efforts to limit the increase of to 1.5 degrees Celsius. Global peaking and climate neutrality, Article 4. To achieve this temperature goal, parties aim to reach global peaking of greenhouse gas emissions as soon as possible. Recognizing peaking will take longer for developing country parties. To achieve a balance between anthropogenic emissions by sources and removals by sinks of GHGs in the second half of the century. Mitigation, Article 4. The Paris Agreement establishes building commitments by all the parties to prepare, communicate and maintain a national determined contribution NDC and to pursue domestic measures to achieve them. It also prescribes that parties shall communicate their NDCs every 5 years and provide information necessary for clarity and transparency. To set a firm foundation for higher ambition, each successive NDC will represent a progression beyond the previous one and reflect the highest possible ambition. Developed countries should continue to take lead by undertaking absolute economy-wide reduction targets, while developing countries should continue enhancing their mitigation efforts and are encouraged to move towards economy-wide targets over time in the light of different national circumstances. Sinks and reservoirs. The Paris Agreements also encourage parties to conserve and enhance as appropriate sinks and reservoirs of GHGs as referred to in Article 4, Paragraph 1, Clause D of the Convention, including forests. Voluntary cooperation or market and non-market based approaches. Article 6. The Paris Agreement recognizes the possibility of voluntary cooperation among parties to allow for higher ambition and sets out principles including environmental integrity, transparency and robust accounting for any cooperation that involves internationally transferal of mitigation outcomes. It establishes a mechanism to contribute the mitigation of GHG emissions and support sustainable development and defines a framework for non-market approaches to sustainable development. Adaptation. Article 7. The Paris Agreement establishes a global goal on adaptation of enhancing adaptive capacity, strengthening resilience and reducing vulnerability to climate change in the context of the temperature goal of the agreement. It aims to significantly strengthen national adaptation efforts, including through support and international cooperation. Okay. Loss and damage. Article 8. Mangrove Alliance for Climate. This initiative to scale up and accelerate conservation and restoring and growing plantation efforts of mangrove ecosystems for benefits of communities globally and recognize importance of these ecosystems for climate change mitigation and adaptation. Essentially, the initiative aims to promote mangroves as a nature-based solution to climate change. It was launched at COP27. An initiative is led by the United Arab Emirates, UAE and Indonesia. Along with India, it also includes Sri Lanka, Australia, Japan and Spain. It seeks to educate and spread awareness worldwide on the role of mangroves in curbing global warming and its potential as a solution for climate change. Specifically, member countries committed to plant, rehabilitate and restore mangroves within their country as well as supporting others to do the same. It also aims at encouraging social and private sector philanthropy approach to support efforts of blue carbon solutions and plantation efforts of mangroves. Methane alert and response system. Launched at the 27th COP by UNEP, it is a data action platform set up as a part of the UNEP International Methane Emissions Observatory strategy to get policy relevant data into the right hands for emissions mitigation. Developed in the framework of the Global Methane Pledge Energy Pathway with initial funding from the European Commission. The US government Global Methane Hub and the Bezos Earth Fund Mars will allow UNEP to corroborate emissions and reported by companies and characterize changes over time. Mars will be implemented with partners including the International Energy Agency and the UNEP hosted Climate and Clean Air Coalition. Mars will be the first publicly available global system capable of transparently connecting methane detection to notification process. AWARE initiative. AWARE Action for Water Adaptation and Resilience initiative has been launched at COP27 of UNFCCC. It focuses on water as both key climate change problem and potential solution. Egypt, the host of COP27, committed to make water a top priority on climate talks. This is the first time that water has been made part of informal agenda of COP of UNFCCC. Object: decrease aware water losses worldwide and improve water supply. Promote mutually agreed cooperative water adaptation action. promote cooperation and interlinkages between water and climate action to achieve the 2030 SDG agenda, particularly SDG 6 on water sanitation. Indian Pavilion. India is hosting a pavilion with the theme of lifestyle for environment at COP27. The pavilion has been designed to send out the message of life through various audio visuals, logo, 3D models, setup, decor, and side events. Life Movement is India's contribution to handling global climate crisis. The Life Movement seeks to transform persons into pro-planet people who would adapt sustainable lifestyles in the modern world. Pavilion logo. Pavilion logo represents the color green, which indicative of green earth has been used in gradient shades in the logo. The leaf on the periphery represents nature, and icons represent how balance and harmony with nature can be achieved through various initiatives of the Government of India. The central part of the logo represents a balanced nature with the sun encompassing trees, mountains, water, and biodiversity. The slogan has been inspired from the core messaging of life. May everyone be happy. Sarve bhavatu sukhina. Sarve bhavantu. Sarve bhavantu sukhina. May everyone to be happy. Pavilion lifestyle for environment. An India-led global mass movement to nudge individual and community action to protect and preserve the environment. About Mission Life. India gave the mantra of life to the world in 2021 at COP26 in Glasgow. It is designed with the objective to mobilize at least 1 billion Indians and other global citizens to take individual and collective action for protecting and preserving the environment in the period 2022 to 2027. Within India, at least 80% of all villages and urban local bodies are aimed to become environment friendly by 2028. Karakoram anomaly, termed as the stability or anomalous growth of glaciers in the central Karakoram, in contrast to the retreat of glaciers in other nearby mountains range of Himalayas and other mountains ranges of the world. Cyanocoj. It is a pan-India map of algal blooms caused by cyanobacteria in India inland water bodies. It has been created using satellite data based on Google Earth. It will act as an early warning system and will assist water resource managers to monitor water quality and aiding decision making. Algal blooms were most severe in the post-monsoon season when nutrients concentrations are highest. About algal bloom. Decomposition of organic waste increases the nutrient content of water bodies. This enrichment causes profuse growth of algal bloom, especially blue-green algae. They cover the entire surface of water bodies and release toxins. Toxins inhibit growth of other algae, and aquatic animals may die due to lack of oxygen and toxicity. The process of nutrient enrichment and loss of biodiversity is referred to as eutrophication. Black carbon level. It has been reported that black carbon concentration near the Gangotri glacier rose 400 times in summer due to forest fires and stubble burning from agriculture waste. According to Wadia Institute of Himalayan Geology, this also triggered glacial melt. Black carbon is the second largest contributor to climate change after CO2. India is the CO2 means carbon dioxide. India is the second largest contributor to black carbon in the world. What is black carbon? Black carbon is produced both naturally and by human activities as a result of the incomplete combustion of fossil fuels, biofuels, and biomass. It is in black in color as its particles strongly absorb sunlight and give short its black color. Black carbon has recently emerged as a major contributor to global climate change, possibly second only to CO2 as the main driver of change. Primary sources include emissions from diesel engines, cook stoves, wood burning, and forest fires. Miyawaki method is a method of ecological engineering to restore and build dense native forests from seeds of native trees on very degraded soils which were deforested and without humus. It is a unique methodology proven to work worldwide irrespective of soil and climate conditions. Blue tides observed in several stretches of Maharashtra coast such as in Juhu beach. The phenomenon is due to bioluminescence, which is the emission of light by microscopic marine plants called phytoplankton. Example: dinoflagellates. The blue light stems from chemical reactions of proteins inside the organism. Dinoflagellates. It is the marine plankton. The population of dinoflagellates thrives in water based on the sea temperature. Dinoflagellates is one of the largest groups of marine eukaryotes in species. These species are photosynthetic. What is bioluminescence? The sparkling light appearance in the sea from the microorganisms is called bioluminescence. Luminescence. The bioluminescence is usually higher in deep living organisms than the shallow species. Bioluminescence is controlled by a circadian clock and only occurs at night. Luminescent and non-luminescent strains can occur in the same species. During nighttime, the number of species is high. The smaller blooms are not harmful. Basically, it is an anti-predatory response. Also, bioluminescence helps the microorganisms to gather together easily and form colonies. Frothing in River Yamuna. The primary reason for froth formation are high phosphate content in the water. It is believed that phosphates from detergent find their way into river water leading to froth formation. Release of surfactants in river water. Release of untreated effluents. As the water rich in the surfactants, phosphates and other untreated waste falls down from the barrages, the turbulence of water results in frothing. Chemicals in detergents. Phosphates are used in detergents for softening hard water by bonding with calcium ions, stabilize alkalinity of surfactants, keep dissolved dirt in water and prevent it from depositing on cloths. Issues with phosphates results in algal bloom and lead to eutrophication. Inhibits biodegradation of organic substances. Nonylphenol, a hazardous chemical which has tendency to bioaccumulate and enters the food chain. It is a hormone disruptor. Hormone disruptor can cause many health issues. Used as a surfactant in detergents, personal hygiene products, automotive and latex paints, lawn care products. Fog. It is one of the major weather hazards impacting road, aviation, transportation, economy and public life. Fog is visible mass consisting of cloud water droplets suspended in the air or near the earth's surface. Fog usually appears over a region of high pressure where humidity is greater than 75%. Moisture in the atmosphere could condense around particulate matter of diameter in the range of nanometers to cause fog. Land use changes and increasing pollution are responsible for growing fog occurrence. Smog. The word smog is derived from smoke and fog. This is the most common example of air pollution that occurs in many cities throughout the world. Classical smog occurs in cool humid climate. It is a mixture of smoke, fog and sulfur dioxide. Chemically it is a reducing mixture and so it also called a reducing smog. Photochemical smog occurs in warm, dry and sunny climate. The main components of the photochemical smog results from the action of sunlight on unsaturated hydrocarbons and nitrogen oxides produced by automobiles and factories. Photochemical smog has high concentration of oxidizing agents and is therefore called as oxidizing smog. Sustainable aviation fuel. Sustainable aviation fuel is a biofuel used to power aircraft that has similar properties to conventional jet fuel but with a smaller carbon footprint. Sustainable aviation fuel has the greatest potential to reduce CO2 emissions from international aviation. Depending on the feedstock and technologies used to produce it, sustainable aviation fuel can reduce life cycle greenhouse gas emissions dramatically compared to conventional jet fuel. Some emerging SAF pathways even have a negative GHG footprint. Some typical feedstocks used are cooking oil and non-palm waste oil from animals or plants, solid waste from homes and businesses such as packaging, paper, textiles and food scraps that would otherwise go to landfill or incineration. Other potential sources include forest waste such as waste food and energy crops including fast growing plants, algae. Sustainable aviation fuel can be blended at up to 50% with traditional jet fuel and all quality tests are completed as per traditional jet fuel. Sustainable aviation fuel is currently more costly than traditional fossil jet fuel. It has the potential to provide a life cycle carbon reduction up to 80% compared to the traditional jet fuel it replaces. Okay, costly. Samarth Mission. Power Ministry in October 2021 had decreed that all thermal power plants ensure 5% compliance of co-firing by October 2022 to reduce stubble burning and to reduce carbon footprint of thermal power plants while increasing the income of farmers. The government has established the National Mission on Use of Biomass in Thermal Power Plants. Samartha Mission refers to Sustainable Agrarian Mission on Use of Biomass in Coal-based thermal power plants. As the name suggests, it is a government initiative to use agro residue which was earlier regarded as waste to produce zero carbon electricity. Co-firing is the combustion of two different types of materials at the same time. One of the advantages of co-firing is that an existing plant can be used to burn a new fuel, which may be cheaper or more environmentally friendly. For example, biomass is sometimes co-fired in existing coal plants instead of new biomass plants. Coral reefs. They are the most biologically diverse ecosystems of the planet. They are formed when coral polyps, the animals primarily responsible for building reefs, develop a symbiotic relationship with photosynthetic algae called Zooxanthellae which lives in its tissues. Coral reefs begin to form when free swimming coral larvae attach to submerged rocks or other hard surfaces along the edges of islands or continents. The coral provides a protected environment and the compounds zooxanthellae needs for photosynthesis. In return, the algae produce carbohydrates that the coral use for food as well as oxygen. The algae also help the coral remove waste. Favorable conditions for formation. Warm tropical oceans with minimum temperature of 20 degrees Celsius, 30 degrees north and 25 degrees south latitudes. Oceanic water-free sedimentation. Transparent parts of ocean bodies. Relatively low salinity ocean bodies. Types of reef formation. Fringing reefs, barrier reefs, atoll. Fringing reefs most common project seaward directly from the shore, forming borders along shoreline and surrounding islands. Barrier reefs grow at border shorelines but at greater distance. They are separated from adjacent landmass by lagoon of open, often deep water. Atoll. It is a fringing reef forms around a volcanic island that subsides completely below sea level while coral continues to grow upward. An atoll forms. Atolls are usually circular or oval with a central lagoon. Distribution in India. Gulf of Kutch represents north limits of corals in Indian Ocean. Intertidal areas on the west coast of India. Lakshadweep Islands. They represent the atoll structures. Gulf of Mannar, Pak Bay, Andaman and Nicobar Islands. Mangroves in India. Mangroves are salt-tolerant plants, also called halophytes, that are tapped to harsh coastal conditions of tropical, subtropical, intertidal regions, receiving rainfall between 1000 to 3000 mm and temperature ranging between 26 to 35 degrees Celsius. Since mangroves are located between the land and sea, they represent the best example of ecotone. About one third of the world's mangroves are found in Asia, 39%, followed by Africa 21%, and North and Central America 15%. Pneumatophores, pneumatophores, commonly found in mangrove species that grow in saline and mudflats, are lateral roots that grow upward out of the mud and water to function as the site of oxygen intake for the submerged primary root system. Buttress roots, also known as plank roots or stilt roots. Stilt roots are large, wide roots on all sides of a shallowly rooted tree. Typically, they found in nutrient-poor tropical forest soils. They may not be very deep. They prevent the tree from falling over, hence the name buttress, while also gathering more nutrients. Importance of wetlands. Act as nature's kidneys by removing polluting nutrients and sediments from source and groundwater. Replenish groundwater. Their filtering capacity helps to protect groundwater quality, helps in nutrients recycling and stabilization of local climate. Buffer shorelines against erosion and pollutants. Provides habitat for wildlife and fisheries, including threatened habitats. Provides recreational opportunities for birds, amphibians and mammals. Acts like a sponge and helps in flood control by soaking extra water from the surroundings. Makes surroundings fertile for the growth of crops. Provides many opportunities for fishing and other commercial activities. Acts as a carbon sink. Soils and around wetlands can store carbon for many years. Climate change mitigation. Provides opportunities for tourism and research. Keoladeo National Park, Rajasthan, man-made freshwater swamps. It is in the Montreux record since 1990 due to water shortage and an unbalanced grazing regime. Included as World Heritage Site, a complex of 10 artificial seasonal lagoons varying in size situated in a densely populated region. The invasive growth of the grass Paspalum distichum has changed the ecological character of large trees of the site. Siberian crane is found here. It is only protected by a surrounding wall on all sides. Purse seen fishing. The Supreme Court has given permission to fishermen using purse-seine fishing gear to fish beyond territorial waters of India, that is beyond 12 nautical miles but within the exclusive economic zone 200 nautical miles of Tamil Nadu. The Supreme Court, however, has also provided certain restrictions on purse-seine fishing vessels. What is purse-seine fishing? Purse-seines are used in the open ocean to target dense schools of single species pelagic midwater fish like tuna and mackerel. A vertical net curtain is used to surround the school of fish, the bottom of which is then drawn together to enclose the fish, rather like tightening the cords of a drawstring purse. Purse-seining fishing in open water is generally considered to be an efficient form of fishing. It has no contact with the seabed and can have low levels of bycatch, accidental catch of unwanted species. States specific ban. Currently, bans on purse-seine fishing are implemented in the territorial waters of Tamil Nadu, Kerala, Puducherry, Odisha, Dadra and Nagar Haveli, and Daman and Diu, and the Andaman and Nicobar Islands up to 12 nautical miles. States such as Gujarat, Andhra Pradesh, Goa, Karnataka, West Bengal have not imposed any such ban, while Maharashtra has issued some orders to regulate but not ban purse-seine fishing in its territorial waters. Turkey earthquake. 3 earthquakes measuring 7.8, 7.6 and 6.0 magnitude on the Richter scale has devastated Turkey and Syria, while the impacting regions as far away as Cyprus 456 kilometers away, Lebanon 874 kilometers, Israel 1381 kilometers and Egypt 1411 kilometers. Richter scale. The Richter scale is a measure of the magnitude of an earthquake, which is a sudden release of energy in the earth's crust that creates seismic waves. The Richter scale was developed by Charles Richter in 1935 and ranges from 1 to 10, with each increment representing a tenfold increase in seismic energy release. An earthquake of magnitude 7 on the Richter scale is considered to be a major event and can cause significant damage, especially in populated areas. This is because the amount of energy released during a magnitude 7 earthquake is about 31.6 times greater than that of magnitude 6 earthquake. Additionally, earthquake of this magnitude can be felt over large distances and can cause widespread damage to buildings, infrastructure and the environment. Richter scale is a measure of the magnitude of an earthquake. What makes Turkey a hotbed of seismic activity? The Anatolian plate is situated in Turkey and forms part of complex and comparatively active system of tectonic activity in the region with its surrounding plates. The plate shares a boundary with the Eurasian plate, the African plate and the Arabian plate and the Aegean Sea plate. This region is perhaps most well known for the northern Anatolian fault, the meeting point of Eurasian and Anatolian tectonic plates, which produces persistent earthquake activity along the fault. As the figure above shows, the Anatolian block is shown to be moving in an easterly motion contrary to the African plate, which moves northwest to form a subduction zone along the Anatolian to African boundary. Then there is East Anatolian fault line, the tectonic boundary between the Anatolian plate and the northward moving Arabian plate. It runs 650 kilometers northward moving Arabian plate. It runs 650 kilometers from East Turkey into the Mediterranean. In addition to this, the Aegean Sea plate located in the eastern Mediterranean Sea under southern Greece and western Turkey is also a source of seismic activity in the region. Basel Convention aims at protecting human health and environment against adverse effects of hazardous waste. Its scope of application covers a wide range of waste defined as hazardous waste based on their origin and or composition and their characteristics, as well as two types of waste defined as other waste: household waste and incinerator ash. Household waste and incinerator ash. Objective of the convention: the convention covers hazardous waste that are explosive, flammable, poisonous, infectious, corrosive, toxic or ecotoxic for environmentally sound management (ESM) of hazardous waste. The convention aims towards restricting transboundary movements of hazardous waste except where it is perceived to be under the principle of ESM. India under the convention. India ratified Basel Convention in 1992. India has been taking measures for the effective management of hazardous waste and thereby meeting the obligations of the Basel Convention. Hazardous and other waste management and transboundary movement rules 2016 was notified to ensure the safe handling, processing, treatment and treatment, storage, collection, transportation, collection and disposal of hazardous waste. Kunming-Montreal Agreement. The United Nations Biodiversity Conference (COP15) ended in Montreal, Canada on 19 December 2022 with a landmark agreement to guide global action on nature. It was chaired by China and hosted by Canada. This agreement has been achieved under Convention on Biological Diversity. It seeks to respond to the Global Assessment Report of Biodiversity and Ecosystem Services issued by the Intergovernmental Science Policy Platform on Biodiversity and Ecosystem Services (IPBES) in 2019, which provides ample evidence that despite ongoing efforts, biodiversity is deteriorating worldwide of rates in unprecedented in human history. An average around 25% of species in assessed animal and plant groups are threatened, suggesting that around 1 million species already face extinction. In total, there are 23 targets and 4 goals. It sets out for 2030 on protection for degraded areas, resource mobilization for conservation, compensation for countries that preserve biodiversity, halting human activity linked to species extinction, reducing by half the spread of invasive alien species, introduced plants and animals that affect endemic biodiversity, cutting pollution to non-harmful levels and minimizing climate change impact and ocean acidification. Key facts: agreement calls upon members to adopt biodiversity supporting methods such as agroecology and sustainable intensification. It also talks about turning cities into hosts of biodiversity by expanding urban green and blue spaces. Urban planning should also be biodiversity inclusive, enhancing native biodiversity, ecological connectivity and integrity, and improving human health and well-being and connection to nature. 4 GBF goals for 2050 deal with maintaining ecosystem integrity and health to halt extinctions, measuring and valuing ecosystem services provided by biodiversity, sharing monetary and non-monetary gains from genetic resources and digital sequencing of genetic resources and with indigenous people and local communities, raising resources for all countries to close a biodiversity finance gap of an estimated $700 billion. Important next thing ఒకసారి చూసుకోవాలి. Spaces Coalition. Spaces is a coalition that believes in the central role of spatial intelligence in joint decision making for nature, climate and sustainable development objectives. Spaces is coordinated by the UN Environment Program, World Conservation Monitoring Center, UNEP, WCMC and System IQ, working with the UN Development Program, International Institute for Applied Systems Analysis, IIASA, and International Institute for Sustainability, IIS, amongst other collaborators. The economics of ecosystem and biodiversity. The economics of ecosystem and biodiversity. The economics of ecosystem and biodiversity (TEEB) is a global initiative focused on making nature's values visible. Its principal objective is to mainstream the values of biodiversity and ecosystem services into decision making at all levels. It aims to achieve this goal by following a structured approach to valuation that helps decision makers reorganize the wide range of benefits provided by ecosystems and biodiversity, demonstrate their values in economic terms, and where appropriate capture those values in decision making. CAMPA Act to compensate for the loss of forest area and to maintain sustainability, the Government of India came up with a well-defined act known as CAMPA, Compensatory Afforestation Fund Management and Planning Authority, establishes National Compensatory Afforestation Fund under the public account of India and a state compensatory afforestation fund under the public account of each state. These funds will receive payments for the compensatory afforestation, net present value of forest NPV and other project specific payments. The national fund will receive 10% of these funds and the state funds will receive the remaining 90%. According to the Act's provision, a company diverting forest land must provide alternative land to take up compensatory afforestation. For afforestation, the company should pay to plant new trees in the alternative land provided to the state. Forest certification. Forest certification was developed at the 1992 UN Conference on Environmental Development UNCED Rio Summit. It is an emerging voluntary market-based instrument, non-regulatory conservation tool for promotion of sustainable forestry. Regulations from developed countries have banned commerce of illegally sourced plants and their products including timber and paper. MOEFCC has emphasized buying products made from certified wood under Green Good Deeds Movement. Indigenous Forest Certification System. Network for certification and conservation of forests has developed India's country-specific and internationally benchmarked forest management certification standard. Certification standard for sustainable forest management developed by NCCF has been endorsed by PEFC. Hydroponics. Plants grown hydroponically grow faster and healthier than plants in soil as they are being provided with required nutrients directly to the roots through water. About hydroponics. Hydroponics is art of growing plants without soil as medium. The plants, most edible ones, are grown using nutrient rich water as well as copious amount of sunlight. It is seen that plants grow a lot better in water provided nutrients are provided in adequate amounts. An advanced form of hydroponics, aeroponics, is the process of growing plants with only water and nutrients. The advantages of aeroponics: faster growth. Eliminating the growing medium is very freeing for plants. Roots, extra oxygen they are exposed to results in faster growth. Water efficient. These closed loop systems use 95% less irrigation than plants grown in soil. Space efficient. Ability to grow large quantities of food in small spaces. Aeroponics is mainly employed in indoor vertical farms which are increasingly common in cities, cutting down on environmental costs of getting food from field to plate. Lower input costs. Can you grow with aeroponics? In theory, anything is possible. In practice, leafy greens, culinary herbs, strawberries, tomatoes, and cucumbers are grown in aeroponic systems which are similar to hydroponic systems. Root crops are impractical in a hydroponic system but ideal in aeroponics because the roots have plenty of room to grow and are easily harvestable. Other vegetable crops are possible but have complex nutrient requirements. Fruiting shrubs and trees are impractical in aeroponic systems due to their size. Fruiting shrubs and trees. Peatlands. They are terrestrial wetland ecosystems in which water-logged conditions prevent plant material from fully decomposing. Production of organic matter exceeds its decomposition, which results in a net accumulation of peat. In cool climates, peatland vegetation is mostly made up of sphagnum mosses. sedges and shrubs and is the primarily builder of peat. In warmer climates, graminoids and woody vegetation provide most of the organic matter. They occur in every climatic zone, and the continent covers 4.23 million kilometers square, which corresponds to 2.84 on Earth's terrestrial surface, which include landscapes that are still actively accumulating peat mires, that others that are no longer accumulating do not support the principal peat farming plants. Stockholm Convention on Persistent Organic Pollutants. It is a global treaty to protect human health and the environment from chemicals that remain intact in the environment for longer periods. Persistent become widely distributed geographically. Long range transport accumulate in the fatty tissue of humans and wildlife bioaccumulation and have harmful impacts on human health for the environment. Rotterdam Convention. The Rotterdam Convention on the prior informed consent procedure for certain hazardous chemicals and pesticides in international trade is a multilateral agreement. The agreement provides obligations on the import and export of certain hazardous chemicals.